Welcome, everyone, to a call for judgment. Well, this story was shared over on the website. I want to thank the person who shared it with me. I would not have known about it unless they did share it. So that's what's great about the website. Everybody's sharing information, interacting with each other. The website, again, it's not about me. It's not about my content. It's a place where people can share information and not be censored, unlike other social media platforms where they're constantly, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, etc., you know the story, constantly censoring people from talking about these topics because, again, this is a communist country now. So the website's a place where people can talk about this, at least for now, until, of course, eventually they shut all websites down that disagree with government because everything's going to be state controlled. So again, I want to thank the subscriber on the website, Truth Seeker, who shares a lot of great information over there, along with everybody else, for sharing this with me. And again, this ties into what we hear and read about in the book of Revelation, in Revelation chapter 9, verse 6, which says, "And in those days shall men seek death and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them." So one of the things that we've heard about over the years, which is, everything is a gateway and a path to what their agendas are, right? They're not just going to come out and say, hey, we could be immortal tomorrow. All you got to do is mix yourself with a machine. They ease you in, right? They ease you in with anti-aging cream. They start beating into your head the obsession with looking younger, being younger, right? We see all these mutant women and men on television, specifically like the Desperate Housewives or whatever those shows are, the housewife shows, where these women just continually get Botox, think that they look younger, but they actually look like aliens, or demons, what we would call, aliens, but really are demons, right? They just look like punching bags. And they do this stuff, and then they continue to beat it into people's heads. So more and more women get Botox, more and more women get facelifts, and it's this obsession with de-aging and never aging, right? Well, again, like that quote I read from Revelation, we know that in the end times that they're going to have the capability, which they already probably have, obviously, of mixing human DNA, mixing iron and clay, so to speak, right? Like the Bible talks about the mixing of iron and clay, mixing humans with machines, having the ability to live forever. They've been beating it into people's heads subliminally with de-aging, but also with these other stories that we hear about, being immortal. Oh, well, humans have the ability to live forever. Well, humans have the ability to never get sick. And more people want that, right? And they also constantly beat in a fear of death into people's minds. That's another thing that they do on the other side of it. They make people so fearful of death, even Christians who shouldn't be fearful of death. They do this on purpose, by design, because even Christians are going to be lured into the mixing of iron and clay, the mixing of man and machine. So this was shared on the website, and this is more of the same. This is more of not just that mindset of de-aging and living forever, but also the mindset of blood transfusions with young people. I covered this, and I had a video up. Of course, the video's been scrubbed. Why wouldn't it be? I'll probably upload it to the website so people can see it, because I still have it saved somewhere. I just have to find it. Where a lot of these TV shows have constantly talked about doing blood transfusions, like from The Simpsons to some other shows on HBO, where they've talked about older people getting blood transfusions from young people, and that it will begin the process of de-aging and be in the process of immortality, so to speak. So here's a guy, biohacker, 45, who, by the way, this guy spends $2 million a year trying to de-age himself. When I see this guy, I'm not saying it to make fun. I don't see somebody that looks healthy at all. He actually looks quite ill, which I'll show you in a second here. But this guy's injecting himself with the blood of his teenage son. So it's kind of funny that we're living in a society where we have free speech censored. If you have a difference of opinion with this commie government, you get censored, you get shut down, et cetera, et cetera. But it's okay for a human being to inject themselves with the blood of their own son. Nothing weird about that, nothing creepy about it. So take a look at this guy. He's a biohacker named Brian Johnson. His quest is to turn back the hands of time. You also notice that he has baby blue painted fingernails. I don't know. He doesn't look 45 to me. He looks older, and he doesn't look like he's in very good health. But this guy is obsessed with de-aging and immortality. And it's not because he fears death, because this is a quote you're going to hear over and over with the mind control. Oh, it's not because we fear death. It's because we love life, right? Think about that mindset, right? It's not because we're afraid of death. It's because we love life. Christians will get lured into that perspective as well, where the most of us who are here, at least who have followed my work, the majority of us, I mean, the most common thing I see people say is, Lord, come back quickly, sound the trumpets, right? Because we're not of this world. This world is an absolute nightmare to us. But to them, when they hear that, they're like, oh, you're depressed, or, that you're just negative, right? And again, it's not because they fear death. It's because they love life. Get a load of this.
As far as I know, it's the first time this has ever been done. You ever done a multi-generational exchange? Ever?
If you start to feel like your eyes start to itch, that's the first sign of a reaction.
What? Good morning. The challenging thing is I need to eat this somehow before we get on the airplane. I'll get my clothes on, get this packed up. I'm ready to go. Are we on time? 30 minutes. So packing really light today, 24-hour trip, so just the essentials. And this, I'll show this to my dad and say, hey Dad, you're gonna get this tomorrow in your plasma. At Blueprint, we have evaluated hundreds of longevity therapies. And I thought it would be pretty epic if my son, my father, and I completed the world's first multi-generational plasma exchange. Plasma is a part of our blood. So when we get our blood drawn, we see a bunch of red stuff. A part of that is the plasma, which can be separated from it. And it started with this really wild experiment where two mice were actually sewn together to share the same circulatory system. It was an old mouse and a young mouse. The results showed that the old mouse got younger. The proposal is not that my father and I get sewn together. The proposal is that I donate my younger plasma to my father. It's possible that this will help him in a variety of ways. There have been several human trials since the mouse study, but young plasma is still an experimental invasive therapy. Even though we completed a battery of baseline measurements on him, there's some level of risk here. And we're leaving at 10:30.
You know what? I might just rep the merch.
Nice.
A year ago, I was living with my mom in Virginia, and I had grown up in a religion for all my life, but I'd never really been into it. And a couple years back, my dad actually had left the religion, and he was sort of the outsider kept at bay by my siblings and I because he didn't check the religion box, he could not be trusted.
He calls himself the world's most measured human. And if you ask him how old he is, well, here's how he explains it.
So we can say my left ear is 64.
Okay.
So I have hearing damage as a child. My diaphragm strength is age 18. My lung capacity is age 18. My heart is about a dozen different ages, different features of it, but it's collectively about 37.
For those of us keeping track the old-fashioned way, he's 45. But he might not be aging like the rest of us because he is doing everything he can to try to slow down growing old.
It's an open science experiment.
What's the end goal?
To demonstrate that we can dramatically slow the rate of aging and reverse the aging that has happened. If we didn't have decay and decline as a assumption that happened, what if it would change everything about being human?
And if that sounds expensive, it is. But 10 years ago, Johnson sold his company Braintree Venmo to PayPal for $800 million. And now he spends about $2 million each year trying to reverse the aging of his body.
We set a world record reversing my epigenetic age by 5.1 years in 7 months.
He says he does it by sticking to a strict regimen he calls Blueprint. And that protocol covers everything from vegan meals like this.
Over a month, I eat about 70 pounds of vegetables.
To a whole bunch of supplements.
I drink this and I take 52 pills.
52 pills in the morning?
Yes, upon waking.
Wow. And a workout routine designed by his teenage son who he competes with. Johnson's body fat now down to 5%. And around his house, everything money can buy to slow down aging.
We're trying to achieve skin quality like an 18-year-old.
And with all due respect, right now, when people see it, they're like, oh, there's a rich guy doing it. Sure. And this costs millions and millions of dollars. You have a team of some 30 doctors. How far away are we from having society, from anyone having access to these types of therapies?
My primary objective with Blueprint is not to solve the accessibility problem globally. The objective in the earliest stages is to show something's feasible.
Dr. Nir Barzilai is the director of the Einstein Institute of Aging Research at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine in New York. And he agrees that aging doesn't have to be synonymous with disease and decline.
It's the aging that drives the disease. And it's an important concept because if we stop the aging, we stop the disease. And I'm not just talking about one disease. I'm talking about all diseases of aging, or most of them, certainly cardiovascular and cancer and cognitive decline and mortality.
Meanwhile, Johnson says he'll keep searching for that 21st century fountain of youth.
I don't have a fear of death. I have a love of life. I mean, how lucky are we that we exist? So why not make the best of it?
So this guy's on a quest to have eternal youth. And again, I mean, if you looked at him, do you tell me that this guy doesn't look sick at all? I mean, is it just me? Is it because of the hair dye in one of the clips? I don't know. But following a strict diet, which you saw, and a workout regime, the tech mogul has managed to shave off some of the years he's accumulated. I mean, how? I don't know. How he shaved it off by doing some of the things he's done. And again, he's probably already mixed with machine. He's probably already had his DNA genetically modified. But the purpose of all these things, and especially guys like this, you know, he sells his company for $800 million. He's obviously one of these people, one of these wicked elites, right? But they want to subliminally message you and get you into de-aging so they can transition you from de-aging into immortality, into mixing your blood with a genetically modified DNA code, which starts with an M and it ends with an RNA. Right? And we see a lot of the experimentation going on now. So the 45-year-old has revealed that in an effort to find the secret of eternal youth, he's been injected with his teenage son's blood. Nothing illegal, by the way, of that. I mean, how is that not illegal? Having undergone blood transfusions with a stranger in the past, Brian has now done the same with his 17-year-old son and his dad, Richard. The three generations of the Johnsons family traveled to a clinic in Dallas where Richard and Talmage had a liter of their blood removed and converted into a batch of plasma and another of red and white blood cells and platelets. Talmage's plasma was then injected into his father in the hope that it will repair any cellular damage and rejuvenate the blood. Or his blood, excuse me. So you heard him in the clip. He's like, I have the lung capacity of an 18-year-old, but I have an ear of a 64-year-old. Like, huh? Like, what are any of these people actually talking about when they really bring this stuff up? Like they can actually tell, your lung capacity. Somebody who's in great shape can have the lung capacity of an 18-year-old. Someone who's never smoked, someone who exercises every day. You don't need $2 million a year. But again, they'll tell you that they do. And then when you follow, and look into this guy, somehow he's got 250,000 YouTube followers, which, isn't a huge deal. But I mean, people are obviously into this and they're very fearful of death. And the more fearful people become of death, the more that they will seek these things. But as the Bible tells us, these people are going to seek death when they're tormented in the end times. They're going to want death. And there's so much predictive programming with people uploading their consciousness. Like I showed that clip from the X-Files, uploading their consciousness, then becoming self-aware that they're not living in a real reality and wanting out, and you can never escape, right? It's eternal what they're doing. And we know that this technology is already here. So again, just keep an eye on these types of stories. I wanted to share it because it's twofold, right? It's the de-aging immortality mindset, and it's also this very disturbing blood transfusion with young children. This kid's 17, all right? It's not that young. But there's tons of predictive programming about doing this. So they already, and I even covered a story once about how they were talking about doing a blood transfusions with 5 to 10-year-olds would help cure Alzheimer's disease. There was a story out there about that. So there's been a ton of stories. And I cover these things because when you see a pattern and repetition of these stories, whether it's being immortal, constantly de-aging, which, again, they don't just, target women anymore at de-aging. It used to be like women, oh, your skin, get rid of your wrinkles, like on QVC or Home Shopping Network. You'd always see that crap. It's still probably on there, right? Your wrinkles will go away, and you watch it and you're just like, it looks the same. It's disgusting. They zoom in on the person's face, but they do it with men now. We see men, the feminist type of men who are getting Botox and caring about all these aesthetic things, these looks, and it's just a mindset that they're forming on people. Twofold: fear death, love life, wink, wink, de-age, live forever. And people will fall for this. Christians specifically will fall for this. They're not going to understand it because a lot of preachers, and again, I'm not a preacher, I'm not a minister, this isn't a church. I guess by definition, I'm a quote unquote conspiracy theorist, right? Or conspiracy realist, because this stuff is all true and real. But the church doesn't talk about these types of things. Like, when do you ever hear them talk about, that specific verse, and then looking at the technology and what's happening in the world? You don't hear it. So a lot of Christians aren't aware of what they're trying to do. They just kind of look at everything like cupcakes and roses. I see so many Christians. I don't see so many, but when I interact with Christians, they're always just like, oh, you're so you got to be positive. You got to look at, and I'm just like, what Bible are you reading? We're not supposed to be of this world. This place is hell. And it's manifesting like never before right now with the stuff that's going on all around us, the promotion of Satanism and the devil, and glorifying and victimizing Satanists. You couldn't make this stuff up. It's so insane. We're in a country now where Satan is more revered than Jesus. So these are things that people need to know about. I'm not a ministry, but hopefully, people out there who listen to my channel, I know barely anybody's even here anymore because of what they've done over and over. But I hope they share this type of information with people so they could see, the repetition, the pattern of these types of stories and what they're trying to get you to, right? They can't just come out, again, they can't come out tomorrow and say, hey, you want to be immortal? Come on down to Walgreens and, we'll make you immortal. We'll mix your blood with a machine and stuff. They just gradually desensitize you to the advancements in technology, to things like de-aging, fears of death, and then they get you there. And people get deceived that way because they get desensitized and don't see the pattern of how, it's very simple how their mind control tactics work. It's very simple if you actually see it. There's a repetition and a pattern to it. I always tell people, if you're new to my channel, which I'm sure nobody really is, but if you are new, you go to CNN, you go to MSNBC, you go to these websites, and just look at the stories and what the messaging is in the stories. They're all always the same. Day after day, there's a pattern there. And that's how they get you and get everyone into what they got them in now, which is a huge psychosis of civil unrest, division, thinking that there's a race war. Trans people feel like they're threatened and not allowed to live. It's all made up, but they do it to both sides, and they get everybody completely just in an uproar against each other, all through a psychosis that they create. And the other side of it is, using programming like this to desensitize you and prepare you for what type of technology is going to be normalized. And then, people are just like, oh yeah, why wouldn't I want to live forever? I don't want to get cancer. I don't want to die. There'll be commercials of, people in hospitals dying and suffering. I guarantee you. And they'll be like, but you don't have to have this. You can avoid all disease if you get this. And people will run and get it, including Christians. So these stories, again, all over the place. I cover them because there's a pattern here and people need to see it. I thank everyone for being here. I thank Truth Seeker for sharing this on the website. I hope to see more people over there. God bless all of you and your families.